Well, thank you, Ashley, for joining me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And so tell me just a little bit about what you do. So you work for the Department of Public Health.
So I don't work for the Department of Public Health,
Okay.
but I work in public health and I work alongside the Department of Public Health a lot. So I actually work for a national nonprofit. So we have a lot of contracts with like state and local public health departments. And one of the big projects that I work on is funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. A lot of people are like, why is CDC funding violence prevention work? But they have a whole injury center. So they do all of the like health stuff, but then they also see violence and injury as a public health issue.
Okay. And so in regards to that, like, abuse and injury and all of those types of things, what do you see in that aspect of it? Like, I mean, like you say, abuse constitutes so many different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of different forms of violence and abuse. I would say that one thing is that it happens across the lifespan. So I think a lot of times when we talk about violence, we either think of like young people, or especially if we're talking about violence happening like within families, we think about like partners, right? Like intimate partner violence or domestic violence. But it actually can start like really, really young in childhood and go all the way through our elderly years. And there's lots of different forms of it too.
So I'm glad you touched on that, because that's one of the things in our industry that we see a lot of is elder abuse. And it's not so much the physical parts of it, but we see a lot of like trying to put their names on the deeds or take their homes away, or just, the financial side of fraud. Do you guys see a lot of that, or do you deal in that aspect of it as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge part of it. So I know with elder abuse, the financial aspect, so financial abuse, which can look a lot of different ways, but that's actually the one that's the most reported by the people that are experiencing the violence themselves, because they are able to sometimes know what's happening, and like they see their money not being there. But a lot of times they don't realize what's going on. And it's not because, of like cognitive decline. That could be a reason too. But it's more so that the people who are abusing them financially are really skilled at being manipulative and doing things in a way that it makes the person being abused feel like it's in their best interest almost.
Yeah, kind of touching on that. I mean, it can come in all kinds of, it doesn't have to be outside force, inside, daughters, sons, yes, grandkids. I know we have a kind of a situation that we've dealt with in kind of our line of work too, where we have a daughter who was manipulating the father, who had been remarried for a long period of time, but she was putting herself on bank accounts. She was taking, not taking her name off the deed. She had it added there. Every appointment for an attorney, anything like that, she was attending. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, that is huge. And that is absolutely elder abuse. So we think about it, anytime that someone is using their power and their control over another person, that can manifest in a lot of different ways. So that's where, someone might use physical violence, but that's also where people can use financial abuse. And so it could be that the person is just completely, kind of being super manipulative and sneaky and just doing these things because the person isn't necessarily paying that close of attention or they don't know. But it could also be things like saying, if you don't leave me that land, I'm not going to take care of you. I'm not going to visit you. I'm not going to make sure that your wishes are fulfilled when you're gone. So it could be kind of like, if I do this for you, then you have to do that for me, like a this and that thing. And that's definitely like coercive. Like we wouldn't consider that consensual. You know what
Correct.
I mean?
They're kind of under duress. Like they weren't.
Exactly. They didn't know what they were saying yes to because they didn't have all of the information. They didn't understand the information that was being provided to them. Or they're not consenting to something that is fully explained, right? So someone might say, well, I just want you to put my name on your bank account so I can make sure that you're managing your money well. But what's really going to end up happening is that person is going to be able to move money, right? So the person might consent to, oh yeah, I want someone making sure that, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my money, that, everything's okay, but they didn't consent to you moving money from one account to another, which unfortunately happens a lot.
Correct. I mean, in this situation, this was kind of similar. We had to have, the person had passed and the current wife was also on the account. And so it was kind of a scary situation. Hey, let's take this money, let's move it to something else, and let's get a POD, which is pay upon death. Mm-hmm. So there's nobody else on your account until you pass, and then they can access that money. Because obviously, if you don't, that person still has the availability to take your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think that, anytime that someone is using your money unauthorized, that is a sign of financial abuse. If someone is using your money in an improper way, a way that you didn't approve of previously, that's considered financial abuse. So sometimes it can be really obvious, right? We would all look at it and say that's abuse. If someone just goes in and drains your account. But if you're also doing things that are going to lead to you being able to take money or take property that aren't so obvious and so jarring, that's still financial abuse. You're planting the seeds for that to be able to happen down the road, which I think is what happened in this case.
Yes, I think so. I mean, the deeds of the property and, remarks that were made of, well, I wouldn't approve of that. Or, it was kind of definitely a manipulative state mm-hmm. that she had him in. Yeah. It was really sad.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really sad because if you think about it, we never expect the people that we love and care about to hurt us in any way. But for all types of violence, across the lifespan, it is typically someone that we know. And that absolutely includes family members.
What other kind of red flags, especially in our industry, should we look for in terms of abuse or abuse in general? Yeah. I mean, financially,
Yeah. So absolutely, I would say that names on accounts that there's no good reason, that would be a huge red flag. Also, checks being made out for someone to cash. So canceled checks in a person's name. Accounts being opened randomly, that kind of you can't really connect the dots to figure out why. That would be another red flag. The other thing I would say is that oftentimes if there is financial abuse going on, there's other types of abuse. So thinking about neglect, is this person only around when money's being discussed? But what's happening when this person's going to the doctor? Are they anywhere to be found? Someone who is really just involved in money because they want to make sure the person is doing things in their best interest, they're going to be involved in everything. So they're going to be there to make sure that, they have what they need in their home, that they're getting doctor's appointments. But a lot of times what we see is these family members are absolutely nowhere to be found except for when there's discussions about money and property. So that would be a really big red flag. Why do you want so much control, but only in this one area? And you're pretty neglectful in all of these other areas.
That makes sense. I've actually had clients that I've dealt with the same situations. And it was actually me taking them to doctor's appointments, them calling me at 4 a.m. when they had fallen and cracked open their head and needed help, those types of things. And they were actually stepkids that were involved. And they were if it doesn't constitute us getting something out of it, then we're not going to really be there to help. And if they were there, it was taking things off the property, or it was kind of manipulating, again, like you had brought out earlier, if you do this for me, then I'll do this for you type of thing. So that's huge because, again, I experienced that in my own dealings with my clients. And it's really sad.
It's really sad because, I think all of us hopefully will get to a nice old age. But we know that there might be things that we need extra support and help with. And that it's really gross that is a green light for people to take advantage of needing that extra support and help. And I know that, a lot of times if we're talking about elderly folks who have had to go into some type of assisted living home, then that's more vulnerable for them to experience abuse from a stranger. So now we're talking about having to worry about what's going on with money and with property, but also what's going on physically, emotionally. So we see a lot, most of the financial abuse does come from close people in their life. So a family member or, I don't know, a close acquaintance. But there's also lots of other additional forms of violence that will often happen, like they'll be co-occurring.
Like, give me a few examples of that.
Yeah. So a lot of times when there's an elder abuse report made and it's in like an assisted living facility, that would be physical violence. So physical or even sexual violence. And a lot of people are like, sexual violence and like, elderly, like I have to continue to worry about that when I'm old. But again, it all goes back to power and control. All of these forms of violence have the same like root to them. Someone wants to have power and control over another person, and what they're going to take might be different, but they all really stem from that. So unfortunately, we do see a lot of sexual abuse co-occurring with financial abuse, neglect, physical abuse, and emotional abuse.
Oh, and the opioids, like if, especially, that's another thing that I have noticed, if they're on pain meds or if they have specific things and they don't monitor their medications, sometimes the family members are abusing that as well, like taking their meds or, not distributing them correctly.
Yeah. I mean, anything that someone can do to continue to have power and control over someone, right? So it could be that they're withholding medication that this person really needs in order to feel good or even to continue living. So it's like, oh, well, if you don't sign this paper, I'm not going to give you this medication that you really need and want. But it could also be like over medicating, right? So you're keeping someone in a state where they don't have their full faculties and they're really not able to realize what's going on and what's happening. Or, so like it's funny because it's not funny, but all of these different forms of violence kind of connect. And they like create this like kind of really scary, like perfect storm, because it could be that the person is being over medicated to the point where they don't really know exactly what's going on. And so that's when people are able to drain money. They might be able to make purchases that the person really doesn't need, but they figure that they'll benefit from it in the long run. So we've definitely seen like purchases of cars when the person who holds the money can't even drive anymore. It's like,
doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. So things like purchases like that, purchasing things that this person wouldn't use. I know I had a situation I heard about where a family member was monitoring funds for their elderly grandparent. And they had just purchased like all of this entertainment equipment, like a whole like big screen TV. And they said, oh, no, it's for him. It's for him. Well, he had macular degeneration. He could not see. And his hearing was like almost, even his hearing aids that he was using didn't work any longer. So what is he really going to benefit from this entertainment system, right? It's just like, it's one of those make it make sense kind of moments.
Oh, and I've actually been, again, in a situation similar to that with a client that I had, and kind of the same thing. I ended up being her trustee for her trust because she didn't have anybody else that she actually trusted enough to do that. I actually had to reach out to her attorney and say, hey, there's some red flags that I've been seeing. Like, I'm kind of worried she respects you. I don't want her to know that I'm calling you. So is there any way like you can reach out to her? Or, maybe I could say I need to make an appointment so that, you can kind of talk to her and figure out what's going on. Yeah. And so we ended up getting down to the bottom of it. And there was some financial abuse. She said the boyfriend, she was 79 years old. The boyfriend she thought was 51. He was 41. He was her beneficiary, the trustee, everything. And she didn't have actual money. She did have property. And so she had contacted me to sell the property. So when I started kind of finding all this out, it was just like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Like you said, help me figure this out. Like she can move in with us. She's, we're going to take care of her. Well, then when it came down to it, those things were not happening. And it was just more and more medication issues. She was falling and getting hurt all the time. Like there's just so many things that just weren't making sense. And then ended up selling the property and putting her in a really nice care home, which I still helped her. I was there every day, like took care of everything for her. And they actually called the Adult Protective Services on me because, it was the stepkids and they were like, well, we feel like, we should be getting this stuff. And I'm like, well, there's nothing there for you to get. It's taking care of her needs right now. And it's going through an attorney. So, talk to her attorney. I'm just the middle guy helping out. But again, it's so easily done and people don't realize,
They don't. And sometimes, as we have like an aging population. And so being a caretaker for an elderly family member, a parent or a spouse or, your grandparents, it's a lot of work. And so I think sometimes, we use like, I don't know, cognitive dissonance to be like, they're fine. They're being taken care of by like their nice younger boyfriend, because that takes it off of our plate. But it's like, what's really going on? I mean, you saw that it wasn't just financial abuse, but that's also domestic violence, right? She thinks she's in a relationship with this person who's financially abusing her. The falls, who knows? Maybe he was pushing her.
Exactly. There was so many things that just didn't add up. And it's sad part of the story is he ended up committing suicide, but none of her family would be around. So I did contact them. I tried to talk to them. And their things to me were, the only updates we want is when she's dead. And I'm like, how sad is that? Like, and you had the nerve to call on me and to like accuse me of doing things. And I literally sat at her bedside when she passed away. Yeah. Like I was the one that was taking care of everything. And I was like, to me, like, it was just sad to see those situations. And in our line of work, like I see them quite often. So it's just one of those things that like is hard for me because I really care about people. And, like our situation that we have, with our friend, like, seeing this person have to struggle and go through this with someone who was abusing their father in that aspect is really hard.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
It is. It really is. And I mean, thank goodness that you have been able to like notice those red flags and do like what's in your power to help those clients that you've had, because a lot of people don't, either because they don't know or because, it's not a comfortable space to be in. It ruffles feathers. It puts more responsibility on you. So a lot of people will just kind of like turn their head. But honestly, like we have to say something. We have to try to help because we would want someone to do that for us.
100%. And I would get people telling me all the time, well, you're just a real estate agent. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not your job. And I was like, but it is my job.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just abandon this person who is scared and has nothing. Like, that's part of my job. Like, to me anyway, like that's the hard part. People are just, one track minded. I'm an agent. I'm selling their house. That's it.
Yep.
Great. That's not how I roll, and if I see something, I can't just sit back and not try to fix it or at least help.
No, absolutely. So one thing that I get to do in my work is we think about how do we prevent these things from happening in the first place?
Right.
Because it's so important to obviously intervene when we see it, to get the people help. But how can we get to a point where like we're not having this issue? Like people just don't do this. And one of the ways is to really think of each other as like we all belong to one another, right? Like we're all part of a community. And so I'm going to look out for you. You're going to look out for me. And I feel like we've lost a lot of that over the years. And, in certain places, it probably feels more like people watch out for each other than in others. But yeah, like that is such a huge piece of if we all were more connected and like watched out for each other, people would be less empowered to try to pull a fast one.
Right. And again, maybe just I did a resource fair for seniors just the other day. And, there was a couple other agents there and stuff, but I really wasn't focusing on like, do you want to sell your property? It's more like, hey, do you have a trust put in place? Do you have these things taken care of so that you're not going through some of the things that I've seen the clients that I've had go through, families fighting over probates, that gets kind of, sketchy in that aspect of things, because everybody wants grandma's money or grandma's house or, so it's really just trying to get out there and just educate them too. Like just the senior population, like you don't have to be afraid. Like there are people that do have your best interest that want to see things go right for you. Yeah. So it's just getting them in a trust, making sure that they have someone that they can rely on. And it's not so much if they don't trust family members. There's the fiduciaries. We work with quite a few of them that are able to help out in that aspect too. Like they can distribute the funds, they can be the trustees, and it makes it a lot safer, I think, for people, especially like say the older people. Yeah. I mean, and younger people. Totally. I mean, it could happen at any age as far as, if you have assets, but we more see it on the elderly side. And again, knowing the situation of a friend that we have is kind of big thing.
Yeah, it makes it really real. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that having like a neutral party helping with that stuff is very smart because I think like even in the best scenarios with families that they haven't displayed that in the past, the introduction of like large sums of money or property can make people do crazy things. And I've seen it with my own family where like I would have never thought that people would get so like worked up and like relationships would be damaged because of like a material item or money. And so yeah, I think like as I continue to age and like think I don't have anything, so I don't I guess it doesn't really matter to me right now. But, you know, hopefully in the future I would definitely want like a neutral party because I don't want to put that on my loved ones and I definitely don't want someone to be able to take advantage of me.
Yeah, 100%. You know, trying to find it to where you have that safe place and safe person is great because I've experienced it with my family, a same thing. And it was a very insignificant amount of money, but it was just the fact of someone thought that they were supposed to get everything and, you know, they didn't follow the proper steps. So again, it's like stepping in and kind of being that like mediator, like, nope, this is the law. This is how it works. Like everyone gets an equal share. And so now people aren't talking to other people. And it's like, we lost a significant person of our family. Like we lost like the matriarch. So now you have to kind of come together and like hold it. Like I said, a very small amount of money, you're going to not talk to family. You're not going to be associated. Like that's just kind of hard.
Yeah, I'm sure you see that a lot and that it just, I don't know, it blows my mind. But yeah, I think that the abuse aspect, it's not something we talk about a lot. So definitely, like, I love that you are having these conversations and it's something that, like, it seems to always be kind of like in the forefront when you're working with people because it happens a lot. I think, like, the last statistic I saw was like 1 in 5 elderly people experience some type of abuse, whether it's financial neglect, physical, sexual, or emotional. But again, we know that if you experience one, the chances are that you're experiencing another as well. Like those are huge numbers. Like we all know 5 elderly people.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't even know. From church or the grocery like store. Could, I mean, exactly. You know, in your community,
exactly,
it's not that hard to pick. Something else I've come across too is, you know, if a child, a minor, gets a large sum of money or inheritance, they have, you know, their caretakers or their, you know, parents or whomever it may be. Mm-hmm. Like, do you see any of that kind of stuff? I've seen it not so much as the elder abuse, but it has come up in some of the dealings that we've had. Like the kids are getting this money and they have a, you know, a parent or, you know, person that's supposed to be helping them and guiding them with it and distributing it. And they really are being neglected and their money is being taken. And it's kind of like they're just being used as a pawn until the parent or whomever can get their hands on this amount of money. Yeah. I mean, do you ever come across anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's hard with the kids because there seems to be more like legalities around accessing the money, right, when they're minors. But definitely, like, again, using like a this for that kind of system where, well, like, I'm not gonna, you know, you don't get new clothes unless you agree that, you know, when this money comes to you, I get this much. Or it could even be the individual who has the money. So the child, the underage person, isn't aware that that money exists. And then, you know, how can you fight for something if you don't know it's there? How can you ask for it if no one told you that it was there, depending on how old they were? I've also seen like money that's intended for a certain use be used for a different use. So, you know, this money is for this child to like eventually go to college or buy a house. But the caregiver's like, well, they needed all of these things growing up, right? Like they were in sports and that costs money. And so it's being like used for something completely different than what it was originally intended for. I've definitely seen that a lot.
So Ashleigh, where can people get help or how do they, if they feel they are being abused or there's signs, like I said, I was able to call the attorney only because her referenced this person. where can people reach out to get help?
Yeah, so in California, there's actually quite a few places. So there are legal assistance programs for people over, I believe, 60. And so they would be able to contact the California Association of Area Agencies and Aging. I know that's a long title, but there is a toll-free number, and then there also is a website. Put it in the links. There's also the California Senior Gateway that can provide kind of like a whole range of services. So they can provide legal services. They can also provide counseling. Because a lot of times when folks realize that they have been financially abused, that's traumatic, right? A lot of times we think of trauma as like a response from physical or sexual abuse. But even knowing that someone used your money for purposes that you didn't intend, that's traumatic. It feels like, someone took something from you. It's a violation, exactly. So those feelings are super valid. So they can provide someone to talk to. There's also through the courts, there is elder abuse self-help. So they will provide a caseworker or someone to advocate if something does have to go through the court system. So this is for someone who has good intentions, but wants to make sure that they kind of stay on the up and up and that they're documenting things so there's never any question about where the money went. And there is a guide for managing someone else's money through consumerfinance.gov. And I think like that's good for anyone. If you are having to manage someone else's money, whether it's a family member or a friend or a client, knowing how to really keep records that are like concise and clear and you can connect the dots to everything is a way to protect you and also to give that person the peace of mind that what is happening is like how it should be.
See, and that would have been great information for me to have back when I was helping this client because I literally kept a folder. So I kept every receipt. And she was like a Walmart, like big lot shopper. So she would send me like when she wasn't able to drive, I was like, nope, sorry, like you're not driving. She wanted to buy a car. Like she was actually having stuff sent to the care home. Because again, I seen all of the accounts and everything, and I would just give her a certain amount in her bank account, like her one account to be able to use for whatever she wanted. And then I paid everything else, all of the care home bills. Like if I went to the grocery store, like I had a specific card that it was only used for that. So it was kind of funny because I literally had this folder and I kept everything that even if it was literally like I bought her Gatorade at Walmart, like it went in that little folder because I didn't want, to have any issues. Sure. And then again, if I would have had that information, it would probably been a lot better because then it could have actually been like here's better records,
right here are the records. Yeah, absolutely. So I think like those are really important resources, and again, like it can also help the person feel better that you are not trying to do anything nefarious. And the other thing I would say about that is like even if they're not able to manage their own money, like involve them in the process as much as possible. So still like involve them in, okay, I'm paying all your bills this month. Like this is how much you owe. This is how much is left. Because as we age and we do start to lose some of our ability to be as independent as we're used to, that's really hard, like emotionally. And so someone just taking the time to like involve them in that can go a really long way. And I think like in the situation that like we know people in, like that wasn't happening.
No.
Things were just happening like on their own.
Yes.
And so if you truly are just trying to be like a helpful resource, then I think that's a really important practice.
See, I'm actually dealing with that with my grandpa right now. So we're dealing, he's in his almost 90s.
Oh my gosh.
Parkinson's, all kinds of different things. He still thinks he can do all the things he did before. Yeah. And again, managing finances is not something he's really capable of. Mm-hmm. He doesn't remember. He loses things. If my mom sometimes doesn't have the patience to talk to him and give him that, like include him, she just gets very frustrated. So that falls on me, mm-hmm. which is totally fine. Like I love my grandpa. I don't have any issues, but like, okay, this is what's happening. Okay, tell me what your bills are. So like, even though it's a repeat and I know, he's giving me like, and I want to do this. Well, this is how much I have on my credit card because I know how to call and check the balance. Okay, well, let's pay that down. Like, okay, if you need to borrow some money, let's put this money here. So just like I said, but it just makes him feel better because when he doesn't know, he's very aggressive. He gets mad. Like, it's very frustrating to everybody.
Yeah, I bet.
He doesn't want to answer phone calls. He'll only want to talk to me. And I'm just like, okay, it's fine. Like it's all on the up and up. This is getting done. This is getting paid, those types of things. So that makes a huge difference. You're absolutely right to involve them. Yeah. Again, in our friend situation, like it's not that. They don't involve them. Things are getting done behind the scenes. Oh, it's just fine. Everything's taken care of. It's okay. And now it's going to litigation. There's all kinds of different things that are going on behind the scenes that make it really stressful. And yeah, it's not a good situation when you're not communicating.
Yeah, no, not at all. So yeah, I would say to someone who's in that position, like you should be involved. You should know, you should have the information if you want it, whether that's someone walking you through it. You should have copies of, the paperwork. Like those things should not be withheld. That's a red flag. Why? People shouldn't tell you not to talk to people. That's another red
huge
flag.
Red flag. Like that was like sent my like spider senses going. Like, why are you not supposed to talk to people? Like something is not right.
Yes.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's great that they have the group of people that are supportive and that do catch those things, that are able to be like, no. And it's not just one person telling them this is wrong. This is not how it should be. This group cares about you for reasons other than financial, so if we're all kind of seeing the same thing, maybe we should take another look.
Yeah. So I think that those would be really good resources. I also just want to circle back really quickly. And one other like example of how financial abuse can look is this is really interesting, but I have seen that people will make gifts to other people. It's like a way to circumvent themselves, but they end up with the money in the end. So like making a gift to the individual's like grandchild, but you're the parent of the grandchild. And so you are going to, intercept. Exactly. So just anything like that just is like out of the norm would also be a red flag. Sometimes I think that those things seem so like nothing to worry about, but they really can be a red flag.
Well, again, a situation that we both know that was happening. And then because they were labeled as gifts, because that's what they were told to do, then now they can't be contributed to paying portion of what their, inheritance was supposed to be from the first marriage. And so now it's like they're reaping the benefits of not only that significant amount of money, but dealing with what they're going through now, they're standing to get a lot more.
A lot more. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today and talking with us about this because, again, most people don't know, or if they do know, they're afraid, or they don't know where to go for help. So this is a really good opportunity for people to be able to see that. We'll put this on our website along with those links.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
No, just again, thank you for having this conversation and for knowing that it's a big deal and people are being like really hurt by it and impacted. And yeah, it was really fun to chat with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.